Hey everyone, it's Ken Fisher from Dandy Orandas. I want to apologize to everyone for not being a little more communicative. I've received countless emails. I've gotten back to people personally, but I've not made a general announcement about what the heck is going on with Dandy Orandas. Right now, I'm actually standing out here in the rain. I've been sitting on some video that I did this summer, and I wanted to put a little intro on it. And so I'm out here doing that, but for those of you who know, I was supposed to do a tour across the country last spring. I spent countless hours and a lot of preparation. I've got customers virtually in every state, and I'd hoped to do a little bit of a YouTube vlog, traveling around, meeting people that I've known via the phone, meeting people in person finally, and talking about fish pathology, filtration, fish variety. I put together a composite. This is just the back of an RV that I designed. It's a composite of photos that I've taken over the years, and I spent over 100 hours just on that. But again, the trip was canceled virtually the day it was supposed to start. And I guess one of the reasons I haven't made the announcement or any updates is because I truthfully have not known what the future has held. I thought I might get back into importing fish last fall and then possibly this spring, and the supply chain's still been compromised. Dandy Orandas has developed contacts over 30 years to get some of the best fish in the world, and all of a sudden that's really in question. And in the meantime, I've also moved my elderly parents up here to Michigan to take care of. I'm trying to keep my good old dad out of nursing care, and it was a little bit too much for my mother to deal with, so they moved up here. Now I have new roommates, and so there's a commitment there, and it's made things, I've been busier now than I've ever been, but I'm happy to do that. But anyway, my sister works in education, and she was able to come up and house sit for 8 days, and I did a quick loop to try and salvage this goldfish tour, and I met some wonderful people. And the reason that I'm out here in the rain is I wanted to thank Mr. Stephen Clarke, who happens to be the world's fastest pumpkin carver. I've known on the phone for about 5 or 6 years now, and was finally able to meet him and his family. His wife Karen and daughter Stephanie were just wonderful hosts, and spent the whole day talking with them about different things, and was able to take my dogs on a walk with their dog, and it was just a great experience. So Steve, everyone, thank you for being so gracious and so kind. I really enjoyed my interaction with you, and trying to get this video done the day before Halloween, and I think that hopefully it's applicable given your title and the little discussion we had about the pumpkin carving. So you know, I think on YouTube it's common, I'm not a big viewer, but it's common for people to say punch the button for like or whatever, hit the button. If you really want to support Dandy Orandas, I ask that you please consider buying Super Gold gel food from me. I spent years developing that with the help of Alan Rapashi. I think we come up with the best food on the planet for goldfish, and I can't advocate it enough. But if you do purchase it, please consider buying from dandyorandas.com. I've got some exclusive sizes that I've got on there, some size offerings. You won't find it cheaper anywhere else. Shipping is free. It's kind of a no-brainer. So if you are interested in it, there's also kind of a tips and tricks on making it. That's on Facebook right now. It needs to go on YouTube. But anyway, mostly thanks again to you, Steve, for being such a wonderful host. And to all of you out there, best to you and yours, and cheers. I hope you enjoy your Halloween and the future beyond. And I've got some tricks up my sleeve and some thoughts I'm not quite, I guess, like I said before, I'm not exactly certain of. So I hate to really talk about it now, but I hope to be back next spring or sometime next year, bigger and better than ever. And look forward to seeing you all in some context, and perhaps back on the road next year if my sister can house sit for a little bit for me. So thanks again. Take care. All right, so I understand that it's pronounced Havertown.
That is correct.
Here in Havertown, Pennsylvania.
It's a beautiful drive through the toll road. Kind of don't realize how much country there is. And
Pennsylvania's a pretty countrified state. We got Pittsburgh on one side and Philadelphia on the other side, and it's all
yeah, and
country in
I haven't
between.
traveled that much to kind of had that reminder of driving, what was it, 180 miles on the toll road? About 3 hours of driving. And of course, I think that funnels you through, literally
Right.
through the mountains. I hadn't been through any tunnels for a while.
We're through Central PA.
But so you miss a lot of the more, wherever the urban spots are, you kind of skip that. But anyways, here in Havertown with the, what is it, worldwide acclaimed,
World's fastest pumpkin carver.
yeah, Mr. Stephen Clarke. And I met Stephen, like many people, over the phone. It's probably only been about 5 years maybe with
Yeah.
you. Some people go back longer, but I kind of knew right off Stephen was an interesting and respectable guy. I certainly kind of gained a liking towards him pretty much immediately, and then learned about this pumpkin situation. So I guess we're going to do the standard questions, which actually I'm going to shift gears real fast. The question was going to be when you got into this, but when did you get into goldfish?
I got into goldfish probably maybe a year before I contacted you.
Oh wow!
I mean, I've had this goldfish pond forever, my original one, but I was looking to get some shabunkins for it because I had standards in there. I was getting them from PetSmart, from the feeder goldfish, and I started looking around and I was like, wow, I had no idea there was this whole world of fancy goldfish out there, and was immediately drawn to it, and so I got into that.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. I would have guessed much longer, especially
Nah.
with what you've done here.
Now the fancy part's been, I mean, I've had fish my whole life.
Yeah.
I've always kept fish, but not the fancies are fairly new for me.
Of course, a lot of this ties into you being a do-it-yourselfer. You've shown me some really interesting stuff. But also kind of, I can tell your interest in plants, botany, and
Right.
just stuff. And goldfish, I guess once you get into them, it's being an artisanal form, what I've always called man-made art. Knowing that they don't exist in nature, it's kind of an interesting thing to pursue and see where it leads.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, the sky's the limit with where they are and where they could potentially continue to go. But anyways, talking about the pumpkin thing, maybe I don't know what the question is. You can tell me a little bit about the origins of that.
Oh, it started, I guess, 25 years ago now. I think I told you I've been competing in the harvest show. Philadelphia, the Horticultural Society had a harvest show where I was showing my vegetables and stuff. And every year I'd try to come up with something new and different. So one year I decided I was going to get this huge basket and fill it full of pumpkins and squash. And I found this basket was like 6 feet wide. And I'm going for the big award at the show. That's what I'm trying to do. And so I filled it full of all these different varieties. I think I had about 50 or 60 different kinds of pumpkin squash in there. Some real small stuff and some pretty big pumpkins.
I was going to say, is it mostly size-based though, or I guess it's overall aesthetic, or
It's a little bit of both.
The
You
form.
want your big ones in there to anchor the basket, and then you want to decorate around it. It's kind of like flower arranging or whatever.
so that was really more of a total arrangement, the total
yeah,
package
Right.
versus just individual specimens.
right. And they have individual specimen categories too, but this was the basket. So I had all these pumpkins, and I won, and I got a gift certificate. So I was wandering around in their gift shop, and I'm like, didn't really see anything that was all that interesting or that my gift certificate was going to buy. And then my eyes landed on this pumpkin carving pattern book.
Wow.
And I was like, I distinctly remember going, oh, that's how they do that, because I had seen a couple of really nicely carved pumpkins in a couple years before that. And so I got it, and I carved, the first one I carved was a witch. And I remember in my kitchen going, Cat, you gotta come down here and look at this. And I'd be switching the light off and on, and it would go from holes in the pumpkin to, I'd turn the light off and this witch's face would pop out. I was like, this is amazing.
Sure.
And so it kind of went from there. I started doing these fancier, and I figured out how to make my own patterns. And,
Well, let me ask you: did you have a background in art? Because I'm more impressed by the artistry than speed is certainly very
The speed
appreciable.
is to get people's attention. The artistry is that's my
Yeah, I
love.
mean, because you really nailing it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this piece that you were kind enough to make for me a few years ago.
I don't. I remember when I was a kid. I remember Highlights magazine.
Oh yeah, always at the dentist.
Right to the end of it, to the crafts thing all
Yeah.
the time, and always looking for something neat to make. And I always enjoyed trying to make stuff, but I wasn't very good at anything. I couldn't really draw or paint or anything. And then I got this, and I was like, wow, I can do this. I can really do this.
Huh.
And the artistry, a lot of the artistry is making the patterns, and, understanding what you can make any kind of pattern. It doesn't mean you can carve it. You have
Oh,
to
sure.
figure out how to make a pattern that you can actually carve.
Well, when you say make a pattern, is that in your mind, or are you actually?
Yeah,
Are you projecting, or are
I
you
look
putting
at pictures. I mean, if I have a photo of a cartoon character, I can use that as a pattern almost right away. But I take a photograph of something, and I run it through a process on Photoshop or any photo editing thing, and I get it down to how many colors I want to use. Like this is a 2-color here. If I was going to cut out, that would be 3 colors. If I was
You mean
gonna
cut out all the way through?
Yeah, if I cut all the way through, that's your lightest color then.
Yeah.
And then the deeper you shave into it, the lighter it is.
Sure.
So I've gotten to the point with real pumpkins where I can do 4 and 5 colors depending on how deep I go with it. It gets complicated.
Is that,
you have to keep referring back and make sure you don't screw
I
up.
should have had you bring some of your tools out, but I'm assuming that's almost like a spoony, scrapey,
Yeah, it's
chiselly.
clay carving tools I use and X-Acto tools. I outline it with I'll put my pattern on the pumpkin, I tape it on, and then I outline. I use a poker and I outline all the outlines.
Oh wow!
Then I take the
that's
pattern
time
off
consuming.
and I go, ooh, because you've just got holes all over the place. So you try to find an anchor. Like on this one, I would anchor on the mouth here, because that's pretty obvious it's the mouth. And then I work my way out from that. Trying to find like this out of all those dots is darn near impossible. So you find something, you know what it is. You work on that and then you work your way out. Like when I do portraits of people, I always start with the eyes, because if the eyes aren't right, it doesn't matter how good the rest of it is.
Yeah, and I've seen like Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Yeah.
I think you've got what is that considered? The screaming face.
Right.
Yeah, just awesome.
Right.
But yeah, I just it's interesting. You just mentioned earlier. It's kind of a side thing, but talking about talented when you're younger and not really having that. I wish as a younger person that or young people in general were more inspired to stay with art, because it seems like if you're not really good to begin with, you're not necessarily inspired to continue with
Yeah.
it, and then therefore get good. And
That's-
because I was into tinkering with it, but wasn't a master, so I gave it up for other things, motorcycles and stuff. But
Well, being a teacher, one of the most disheartening things I hear when I do exhibitions, and I hear this all the time, and it's almost always from middle school age kids, is, oh, I wish I had a talent. And it just kills me to hear that, because they do. They just don't happen to know what it is yet.
yeah,
And I tell them, like, I was 43 years old when I figured out I could do this. You're 15.
yeah,
or
you're not
12.
born with. Most people aren't born with the talent.
Right.
You have
And
to evolve it.
We all have things. I was just lucky enough to happen to hit on figuring out what mine was, and it's one of the messages. Like, I try to use what I'm doing, because I'm a teacher at heart and I'm always teaching, and there's lessons to be learned from people. Like, you can do a lot more than you think you can, and you have things that are impressive to other people. They're just not impressive to you, and so you don't think you have a talent.
That's true.
And, people have to give things time, let things develop sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to give yourself the credit that you deserve, or
Right.
have that. I wish I would have had more influence when I was younger. I have a claim to fame. It's not in the Guinness Book of World Records, but I'm pretty sure I've taken more goldfish pictures than anyone on the planet. I'm up to approximately 400,000.
Wow.
That's because I usually take 10 or more photos of each fish that I've auctioned. But I do have to admit that I'm not doing it currently, not importing currently, but I have to say I got to the point where I disliked it, because it became a job, and I got away from the artistic side of it, which is really what I'd rather get into, the beauty, the capturing the essence of the fish, whereas for me it was just taking cookie cutter pictures to try and present the fish the way it was, and you know, not try to show it as something it wasn't, but accurate representation of the fish. But yeah, I think I've taken, I don't know anybody else that would have taken that many, but that's my guess of claim to fame. But
you make a really excellent point about that. People ask me all the time, how much money do I make, and how much do I sell them for? And I'm like, I only take a few jobs every year because I discovered really early on that carving pumpkins for money sucks. It's not fun.
I thought about it for you because I was thinking from a corporate level. For me, this is priceless.
Yes, but you remember, you didn't ask me to do this. I asked you if you wanted me to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a difference there. Like at certain times of the year, I don't have time, and people want me to. I'm like, no, I don't have time. Nor do I really want your money for this.
This obviously isn't the. What's your record? 15 seconds or
16.47 is the official record, but I've done it faster than that. I've done it as fast as 13.
Come on now. Now I believe it. So I've got a few other questions. One that comes to mind is, how many times have you stabbed yourself or cut yourself?
I don't cut myself. Every once in a while I scrape myself. I don't use a knife. I use a saw.
Oh yeah.
So, and one of the reasons I use the saw is because it's more easy. It's easier to control.
Sure.
And people get into trouble carving pumpkins all the time because it's slippery. Your hand slips off the handle into the knife, or you're pushing and pushing, nothing happens. All of a sudden it goes. I actually had a hand surgeon, ask me to do a public service thing for them. He said, you wouldn't believe the amount of people we have come in on Halloween with destroyed hands.
Well, I've heard about one of the most common hand injuries is people trying to pit an avocado because they have it. Then I saw my mom do it once. I'm like, Mom, that's not what I showed you. You're supposed to whack it like this. So you whack into it. She's trying to stab the seed. And you know, if you go off a tangent, you're into your hand.
Yep.
But
so yeah,
that's probably a common question. People
I get that all the
assume
time, and the injuries I get is tendonitis in my elbows,
Yeah.
especially oddly enough the left elbow, which is the one I don't use because when I do an exhibition, let's say I'm carving 100 pumpkins, this arm is clamped in
I
this
don't doubt
position
it.
for several hours.
That's the kind of thing that gets me.
And
being in
my
one
elbow
position.
gets really sore. And I also get my nails get all screwed up and my cuticles peeled. The pumpkin juice is really acidic, and it literally like eats away at your nails and stuff.
So you're at 16 point some seconds,
Yep.
but obviously this is not something you crank out in
No.
seconds or minutes, or I can't imagine how long that would take. So
About 5 or 6 hours.
oh no, geez, I'm even more thankful. And I like the way you captured as a business person. I've been told or I've understood that Comic Sans is not a very professional font.
That is true.
You're
My
not
daughter
supposed to
tells me
use
it
that.
all the time.
Don't use Comic Sans. But you know what? For me, it was an extension. Dandy Orandas was an extension of the hobby, which was
Right.
an extension of my love for the fish. And I always felt them to be, you know, kind of cute and fun hobby. And Comic Sans somehow captured that for
Well,
me.
from my point of view, Comic Sans is easy to carve. Some of the other fonts are much
Yeah,
harder
I was
to
gonna
carve.
say, I mean,
Times New Roman stuff to carve.
You nailed it. But then your artistic or your creative juice that you were able to put in this, we'll just give a quick close-up, although I would probably go out of focus. But you're able to put in this, the stitches,
And the
giving it
little
a Frankenstein thing.
bolt in the neck.
But then, additionally, you were thoughtful, I guess, experience. To me, it's amazing, but, and I used to work in the printing business, so I guess we would call this a reverse. Perhaps I'm not sure what you label it as, but, you know, this went into the orange, this one's over top the white, so you had to create a reverse of the one. I don't know if that's your term.
Experience.
But
I don't have a name for it. I just know that's
obviously,
what I got to do.
That worked to capture
Right.
that. And then just the face itself, I hadn't thought about it. We're almost going to qualify this as a telescope Oranda. Although eyes, as we know, bulge in different ways. But the mouth really captures kind of the essence of Goldfish too. Plus it's spooky.
It's funny because when I get it right and I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I got that. Other
Yeah.
times I'm like, I hope they're happy with it. You know.
You know, and just for clarity, there was one thing you had mentioned, and I love this piece, but you had expressed, I don't know what you told me at the time, but there were two types of, what do you call these, permanent?
Artificial.
Artificial pumpkins. That the one is more, what would you call it, able to be illuminated from inside.
Yeah.
Whereas this one
This
doesn't
one's-
illuminate
yeah.
that well.
It depends. Generally, how people want to display it. If they want to display it during the day, you're better off with something like this. If you want to light it up, then the other ones work better.
And that's because it's a different
Yeah,
composition. it's more
yeah.
translucent,
And
maybe.
these have seams on the inside of them.
On
and
the
those
sides,
seams,
yeah.
those seams will show through with the light.
Oh yeah.
See that this line here down the middle is going to show through as a dark line through the middle.
My mom was convinced that was a somehow preserved dried pumpkin. I was like, Mom, don't you see these seams? But yeah, thank you very much. That's something I'm gonna get
Yeah,
up
I
for a
enjoyed doing
lifetime.
that.
I have
It's
to
fun.
admit it was a little dusty before I brought it
That's
here
right.
from sitting on my shelf. But yeah, I really
It's,
thank
it's
you
nice
for
to
that.
see. I haven't seen that in a few years. I've almost forgotten what it looked like.
But I had thought, that guy, if he retires, he could make a good living with these things. But I totally understand your thoughts on doing it because you want to. And,
Yep.
if you're spending 5 hours on it,
It gets
how much is that
tedious.
worth? That gets
Well,
to
it
be
becomes. I get home from basketball practice at 5:30, 6 o'clock, eat dinner, and then I got to sit down and carve, and I just want to sit down and relax. You know?
I hear you there.
So the funny thing is I get a lot of my really nice carving I do after Halloween because I can get pumpkins cheap. Because I can't afford those giant pumpkins, and I have some patterns that can only be done on really big ones. But I can go to people and be like, hey, if you're going to get rid of that, just give me a call before you do, and I'll come and pick it up for you.
But then, that's a real pumpkin, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And then-
you spend that time, but then how long do they last?
They don't. They go in my compost pile. That's a question I get all the time, and honestly, for me, a lot of it is, can I do this? And once I do it and take a picture, I don't really care what happens to it after that. I mean, to me, it's like, yeah, I got it. That was really hard, and I got it perfectly. I've got my photo. It's going to last for 2 days. I've got my compost pile.
Well, meeting you has been a pleasure. I'm going to try and follow your lead. I really like that thought of the challenge, because for me, I would probably be defeatist and think, well, that thing's just going to be rotten in a couple of weeks, and why do it? But
They actually look pretty cool, some of them, when they're starting to rot. The
Well,
faces
sure.
get distorted, and
you could almost do a time lapse of something like that. It's like the aging process.
I
When you
usually
start
take
sagging.
I usually take a picture of the pile of them in my garden, just because people ask me all the time what I do with them. This way I can go here. That's what I do with them.
You do a photo archive of
Yeah,
all of them, right?
I do. I have a photo archive. And on Halloween, towards the end of the night, when the older kids come around and they show interest in any of them, I'll be like, listen, if you come back here at like 10 o'clock, I'll give it to you.
Huh?
And because it's just going in my compost pile eventually anyway.
That's cool.
And so
How about the
I
other-
originally did it because it was just a nice thing to do. And then I realized, hey, none of my pumpkins ever get smashed because
That was what I was going to say.
they might get it.
I thought
You
older
know?
kids smashed your pumpkins. They didn't appreciate them.
Most of the older kids around here are younger kids who grew up looking at my pumpkin carvings.
Yeah.
And so, I used to, I haven't in the last couple of years, but we have a local park that I do that exhibition every year at, and all the neighborhood kids are there. So, my daughter has come up with this idea. She's like, Dad, you ought to, like, the night before Halloween, tell all the young kids to put their pumpkins out on the doorstep, and the pumpkin man might come by and carve their pumpkin for them if they're
Huh.
good. I'm like, that would be a lot of fun, yes, but it would also be a lot of work.
Yeah.
Hey, here's where work worked out for me well this year. The one good thing about COVID is everybody wanted me to do virtual pumpkin carving exhibitions for them. So I was getting these high-powered law firms up in New York offering to pay me ridiculous amounts of money to do an hour of pumpkin
Well, that's
carving
not
for
too
them.
hard to turn down, is
I'm
it?
like, no, I wasn't turning down any of them. That was a good deal. Because that's different because that's interactive. I'm interacting with people when I do that, and I
Well,
love
sure,
like
yeah.
when I do live exhibitions. I love having the kids. Parents are like, so come, I'm not gonna let them come up.
Yeah,
let
that's
them
going to
come
be
up."
stimulating. Sitting in your basement carving a pumpkin, it's not that.
exactly. And so I was making good money, and they were easy to do, and it was basically I was doing the same show for everybody. So that worked out really well for me this year. I'm hoping that people are still going to want to do virtual ones next year, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think it's a pretty cool niche, and
It's a little odd niche, but it's my niche.
yeah, your claim to fame. You have your eyes on potential competition out there, people you know of that are it's like a hot dog eating contest or something.
There's competition. People have attempted certain ones. People have broken other ones. Like the single face record I had for a long time that I broke at on Food Network. And I leave them alone unless somebody asked me. And then this guy from England broke it. And I was like, well, everything goes. My time's I've been for like 20 years. It's not a big deal. And then I started reading some articles, and the guy was, shall we say, talking trash, and he got me a little riled up. So I called Guinness. I'm like, set something up, because this guy's a pretender. And so,
well, hey, it's good. Kudos
and
for
that
you
was
for calling him out.
several years ago, and he has not beaten it. So I'm assuming that he can't.
Huh.
So.
Awesome. Well, we talked about it earlier. As a Trekkie, I'll give you the live long and prosper, brother. I'm very happy to meet you.
You too. Good meeting you.
I just hope my audio wasn't too